This is Kevin with MBA Prep School, and welcome to the MBA interview series. My guest today is Maloney. Caitlin is a little bit of a lifer at Stanford. She did her undergrad there before returning for her MBA. And in between, Caitlin also worked in New York in digital marketing and also has some awesome experiences overseas, including learning Chinese in Beijing and teaching English in Bali. And after graduating from the GSB last year, Caitlin has founded her own venture called Hey Mama. And now she's here to tell us all about her story. Caitlin, welcome. It's great to talk to you again.
It's great to be talking with you too.
So tell us about Hey Mama. I know it's an exciting venture aimed at new mothers. So how did you conceive the idea and then take it from the very beginning to the fundraising that it's going through now?
Sure. So our mission at Hey Mama is to create more moments of joy and less moments of anxiety for every mom. And what we're building is really the first smart support platform for moms. It's a mobile platform. So we use AI to connect moms with all the different kinds of support they need, from personalized support groups of other moms that are, designed for each individual mom to chatting with experts on our platform. And it's interesting you asked how I conceived of it because I actually started it in a class at Stanford Business School. It was called Startup Garage, and it walks you through the lean startup methodology. And it was like really important in my kind of entrepreneurial journey. Taught you everything you need to know from empathy interviews to prototyping to founder agreements and finding a founder. And so it really is what catapulted me into becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business.
It's interesting you mentioned the Startup Garage because I know you had wanted to be an entrepreneur well before showing up at Stanford. And obviously Stanford itself has a long, strong connection with entrepreneurship and innovation. But in your case, given your own experience, how do you think the Stanford experience was valuable in terms of shaping the kind of entrepreneur that you became? Like, do you think it's really had a big impact in terms of what kind of business leader you became?
I think it really did have a tremendous impact. I've only had one business school experience, but I think when it comes to becoming an entrepreneur, if you know you want to do that, you can't really beat Stanford Business School. Of course, they have tons of classes that cater to entrepreneurship, from the Startup Garage class and other hands-on classes, to even beyond take a finance class that's specific to entrepreneurship, which you need because all that term sheet stuff is so confusing and crazy, and you should learn it. But also just the culture and being in Silicon Valley and the connections you made. I had professors who are VCs. The Startup Grad teaching team was all VCs and entrepreneurs. So once you kind of leave the classroom setting and you start to really think about starting your own business, you already have a massive network of people who are willing to invest or help or introduce you to the right people. And you really can't beat that as a first-time founder.
Yeah, one of the truly distinctive features about Stanford is the really distinctive ecosystem of entrepreneurship. Like, a lot of times you can't even tell when Stanford ends and where the Silicon Valley begins. And everything just seems like a total interweave of connections and activities and resources. And everything just kind of comes together as one entity for the benefit of students. So for someone like you, to what extent do you think that the location of Silicon Valley and Stanford's extensive connection with the Silicon Valley was really advantageous for someone like you who was training to become an entrepreneur?
I think, it is a way for them to attract those people who want to be entrepreneurs. Like I said, there's no really better school to know that, one of your professors is a VC at a firm that's really popular, or, you're having all these crazy people who are really successful entrepreneurs come and talk, and you can meet them after class. I think, one of the things I didn't necessarily realize that maybe I should have was that entrepreneurship is a lot about networking. It's a lot about knowing the right people to get in front of the right people and get introduced to the right people. So the fact that, like you said, it's exactly on point. You can't really even tell where the resources end and where Silicon Valley starts. It's all such a strong ecosystem. And just the fact that, Stanford GSB opens a lot of doors in a lot of worlds, but definitely in the entrepreneurial world as well.
And one of the things about entrepreneurship is that concepts and ideas can keep changing. Like in your own case, you had actually wanted to be in the healthcare space when you started out. So what made you pivot away from healthcare into the current path that you're on?
So it's actually interesting you asked. We actually started more in the healthcare space, thinking about nutrition for women who are pregnant. And we went through the lean startup methodology process, which is kind of very popular in Silicon Valley and tried and true at this point, and started interviewing pregnant women about their nutrition and realized that the pain point wasn't big enough and it was going to be a vitamin, not a painkiller. And so started to pivot based on what we were hearing from users and kind of ended up here. And now we're kind of circling back to being more in healthcare by bringing healthcare experts onto our platform to chat with our users. So kind of full circle, but you listen to the users, and that's what Lean Startup teaches you. Interview users, look for an insight, prototype test, and then start over again. And that's kind of the process.
Now, has anything surprised you about the process of becoming an entrepreneur? I mean, at the beginning, I know you had wanted to be an entrepreneur before even entering Stanford, but at that point, you weren't really on the entrepreneurship path yet. So after going through the 2 years at Stanford and now founding your own firm, has anything kind of jumped out at you, something that was unexpected and different from your own, perceived notion of entrepreneurship when it first began?
I mean, there's surprises every day, but I think one of the big surprises is kind of length of time. I think when you're not really in the space, or you're not in Silicon Valley, or you don't know a lot of entrepreneurs, you may think, you're going to blow up overnight and have this big success, but in reality, it takes 2 years, 3 years for you to even really find product market fit for most companies. And just the number of times you need to step back and think about pivoting, either big pivot or a small pivot, or like rethink your idea, just to kind of get to product market fit. I mean, the idea of product market fit wasn't even something I knew before I came into GSP, but it's definitely kind of the whole process and the length of time and the amount of work, and it's just all kind of been a learning process for sure, but a fun one.
Now, aside from the purely entrepreneurship stuff, what were some of the other activities at the GSB that you really found valuable? Like, give us a sense of what your whole life was like at the GSB away from the purely professional stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the GSB experience is amazing. Stanford, even the undergrad culture, which you mentioned, I went there, it's just such a laid back, really friendly place. So there's no competitive vibe at all, which I personally really enjoy when I'm in a learning environment. But I think, all of the classes have really played a role in my career and in entrepreneurship in general, even just, getting a little taste of all of the different functions of a business, and knowing, even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're just an employee of a company, knowing, how the decisions you make can affect finance, can affect accounting, can affect HR. That's like a whole new world as you kind of learn all the different departments. I think specifically for Stanford, the focus on personal development is really unique and has had a huge impact on me. The class is pretty famous, called Touchy Feely, actually called Interpersonal Dynamics, is a really amazing class that teaches you all about your strengths, your weaknesses, how to take negative feedback in a constructive way. That was a huge part of it, and I think the whole culture around Stanford is very much about personal development and leadership, as well as, gaining new knowledge that you didn't already have.
Well, now that you mentioned touchy-feely, I think my viewers are going to kill me if I don't follow up on this question, because touchy-feely is essentially the signature resource at Stanford. So tell us about touchy-feely. What was the course like and what made it so valuable to go through that experience?
So, the class is really hard to explain, and you're never going to really know what it's like until you take it, but it's a small group class. There's like 13 people in your group, and you spend 4 straight hours together, one night a week, every week for the entire quarter. And there's kind of a set curriculum. There's different readings that you do. There's different topics about communication in a group, leadership, getting negative feedback, strengths, weaknesses, fears, hopes, dreams, all that kind of really touchy-feely stuff. And but besides that, there's really no agenda. You just sit in a room and you see where the conversation takes you, and it really highlights a lot. You learn a ton about yourself. In a very personal, very private way. And I know that's so vague, but you just gotta go to GSP and take it. It's amazing.
So do you think it's really had a big impact in terms of changing the way you relate to people or even conduct your relationships, both professionally and personally, since taking that touchy-feely course?
1,000%. It's changed every relationship I have, both professionally and personally, and leveled up my communication skills so much. It really has.
Well, as we mentioned, you were at Stanford for undergrad, and then you returned for a second go around as a graduate school student, as a business school student. So when you compare, what you did as a graduate student versus undergrad, do you see it as more of a continuation of the one same process, and just interrupted by, a couple of years of work hiatus in New York, or was the graduate school experience fundamentally different from what you experienced as an undergrad?
I think for me, it was a completely different experience. And I think, one of the things I kind of observed is that a lot of people, the second time around going to school, they maybe try a different, they maybe 180 their approach to school. So for me, undergrad was very social. I had my major and minor, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my career. And it was kind of just the next step in my education. versus for graduate school, it was something I chose to do. I knew why I was there. I had goals, and it was way more academic in a sense for me. So I think that was the main difference.
Yeah, I remember when you were looking at business schools, you essentially were looking at California schools, and that was it. So why such a singular focus at that time? Was it just because you had a fantastic experience at Stanford as an undergrad, and that's why you were so focused on California? Or what were the factors that caused you to be so kind of, single-minded in terms of the geographic location?
Well, Stanford was always my first choice because I went there undergrad and my family's from the area. And like you mentioned, I've been in New York for 4 years, born and raised otherwise in California. Just not a New York person, definitely a California person. So I wanted to get back to the sunshine, to my family. I knew I wanted to go into entrepreneurship. I was super interested in healthcare. So I knew Berkeley in this area out here was really a great place for both entrepreneurship and healthcare and biotech. So that was kind of why I drove for the West Coast. Mainly, I just love California.
Yeah, it's not hard to imagine that one at all. So now that you've gone through this process yourself, what would be your advice and suggestions for people who are just starting this journey of business school and they're about to look at 2 years, away from their work and normal life to go back to school? What would be your advice in terms of getting the most out of this experience?
Yeah, that's a hard question because everybody's trying to kind of accomplish different things in business school. But I would say be intentional about it. Think about prioritization, and you'll see when you get to business school that there's class and there's social stuff and there's just so much stuff going on that, one thing it teaches you no matter what is how to prioritize your time. And so be intentional about what are your goals for business school and how you're going to make sure you make time to achieve those goals, whether they're social, academic, career, whatever they are. That'd be my advice.
Now, in terms of your own prioritization and goals, do you think they changed at all during your time in business school, or were your prioritizations and goals pretty similar to what you started out as when you first entered business school?
Yeah, I think that my prioritization pretty much stayed the same, like what I thought going in, what I wanted to get out of it, and what I ended up getting out of it. I would say I was surprised by how much I had to prioritize and how much there was to do and how kind of overwhelming it was in that sense with like all of the different options of things you could do in every hour of every single day. I wasn't expecting all of that, so it was a little harder to stay on the path, but I think my path stayed the same.
Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. Best of luck with Hey Mama and everything else going forward, and continue to enjoy sunny California. Great to catch up with you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.